What is the fastest you have ever seen someone go from rich to broke, and what caused it? One family received about $350,000 from a legal settlement. They treated the money like permanent wealth. Both parents quit working, renovated their kitchen, traveled, and upgraded their lifestyle. A financial advisor warned them that the money could not support an early retirement. But every warning felt unnecessary while the account still looked enormous. Roughly 10 months later, the money was gone. Then the house went too. Their adult child refused to borrow money on their behalf and was cut off from the family for what the parents considered a betrayal. The settlement had been large enough to change their future. They confused that with being rich enough to stop planning for one. A man spent hundreds of thousands of dollars converting a large house into an adult care home. After months of construction, permits, and licensing, the business finally opened. 2 residents were already bringing in about $22,000 a month, and there was room for 6 more. It looked like the difficult part was over. Then the owner began drinking throughout the workday. He argued with an employee, the police arrived, and they found him intoxicated while responsible for vulnerable residents. The facility closed almost immediately. He had to sell the property at a loss, turning a nearly completed business into an expensive warning about how quickly 1 week can erase years of work. An elderly nurse bought scratch-off tickets almost every day until he finally won $100,000. His coworkers celebrated because they thought the prize would let him retire comfortably. Instead, he went on an extravagant trip and spent the money on hotels, nightlife, and gambling. The entire prize disappeared before it could meaningfully change his life. He returned to the same job with a remarkable vacation story and almost none of the security everyone had imagined for him. A young man made a fortune in cryptocurrency and resigned from his job as dramatically as possible. He traveled, bought expensive cars, and spent months celebrating the fact that he would never need a normal paycheck again. The value on his screen felt like money that had already survived every possible consequence. Then the tax bill arrived. He had spent the cash needed to pay taxes on his gains. Selling what remained was not enough, and the debt bankrupted him. His fortune did not vanish because the investment failed. It vanished because he treated the gross number as if every dollar belonged to him. Another cryptocurrency winner built an enormous concrete house and bought a Ferrari in a small town. For a while, the house and car made him look like the clearest success story anyone there had ever seen. 2 years later, he was working construction and driving a rusty pickup truck. He still had the unusual house, but it was so personalized and expensive that selling it for what he had spent seemed nearly impossible. He had converted flexible wealth into objects that demanded more money and offered very little way back out. One person inherited a large amount of money just as their impulse control and drinking were getting worse. Nothing disappeared in one cinematic purchase. The fortune leaked away through constant takeout, daily alcohol, unnecessary shopping, and online spending used to feel noticed for a few minutes at a time. Small decisions became expensive because they happened every day. By the time the person admitted what was happening, both the inheritance and the professional success that came before it were gone. A successful businessman retired as a millionaire and moved to Spain. He had never been much of a drinker while running his company. Without the routine and responsibility of work, he tried the party lifestyle and discovered that he liked it far too much. Years later, relatives found a completely different man. The immaculate clothes were gone, the suit no longer fit, and he was living with his son without money of his own. He had spent decades building the fortune. Retirement removed the structure that had helped him keep it. A technology founder sold his company and his apartment, leaving him with more than $2.5 million in cash. He moved to another state and started day trading. The first year went well enough to convince him that he had discovered a second career rather than enjoyed a temporary run of luck. The following year, his reserves fell below $10,000. He had already won the difficult game by selling a company. Then he risked nearly all of the prize trying to prove that the win could be repeated every day. 2 brothers each received about $150,000 from an inheritance. One brother watched his share disappear within 2 years. The other admitted that he had also spent most of his portion, but he had first paid off his house. On paper, both men had lost nearly the same amount of cash. In reality, one was left with nothing while the other was left without rent or a mortgage. The difference was not how much they spent. It was whether they purchased freedom before the spending began. A business owner built his company from nothing and eventually had the large house, expensive lifestyle, and public image of success. His family spent generously, and he quietly spent even more on another relationship. The company kept earning money, but their commitments grew faster than its profits. Loans covered the gap until there was no gap left to hide. Debt, divorce, and unpaid obligations arrived together. The businessman ended up in a small house, still proposing new ventures and borrowing money as though the collapse had been a temporary accounting error. Losing everything did not change the habit that caused it. One retail company expanded through stores that borrowed money while the main business guaranteed the loans. The owner kept using company resources for family expenses and another private venture. When several stores began missing payments, the banks did not stop with those locations. They claimed against the parent company too. The business had already burned through most of its available cash on inventory and rescue attempts. The whole company was liquidated, and its financial officer later faced legal consequences. The owner believed every new store separated risk. The guarantees had quietly connected all of them. The fastest collapses in the discussion had different details but the same pattern. Sudden money made temporary conditions feel permanent. A good trading year looked like proof of genius. A settlement looked like retirement. A growing company looked incapable of shrinking. An inheritance looked too large to measure one ordinary purchase at a time. Most fortunes did not disappear with one spectacular mistake. They disappeared after the first mistake removed the person's reason to be cautious, and every later decision was made to protect the fantasy that nothing had changed. Every day, we find the questions Reddit can't stop talking about. Have a story like this? Share it below. It might be featured in a future video. See you in the next story.